Matt Barrows during the 49ers press conference.
I hate to blow my one question on a rumor, but there was a big one this morning from Boomer Esiason on his radio show. I'm sure you've heard it by now that you were contemplating going back to TV. I was hoping that you could address that.
I thought he was talking to me. I was like, I've never been on TV.
Yeah, I have not heard that that rumor. From time to time, opportunities are presented, and I can tell you and tell everyone that that my commitment right now is to this organization. And we're just coming off a season, but my commitment is to the 49ers, to the York family, to Kyle, and standing up in front of that team yesterday and just getting an opportunity to reflect on what we have. And I do think we have something special, and we're here to win championships, and we fell short of that. But I think both things can be true, that that's our standard, but you're also the amount of pride and feel like it's a real blessing to be a part of this organization. So my commitment is right here, and that's where I'll be.
You had told me, but when I had heard, I was listening in the shower. I was about to hop in the shower, so I just played their press conference. It was like the second question. So I didn't visually see Kyle shaking his head, doing the little jab, and then I got out and I just watched the answer from John, and I could see it on his face. But there, you could see John's face, guy, when he's being asked the question, like, what the fuck? He is stunned. And Kyle, you had mentioned this, but when you watch it, you really realize he tries to, shatter the ice in the room, kind of.
Yeah, I think
John Lynch was stunned with that question.
Yes, and I don't. The goal is to not be caught off guard by anything when you do one of these press conferences. I'll say this first: we both have a ton of respect for John Lynch. He's been on this podcast actually, and I don't. He's clearly uncomfortable here. And you could argue he's just uncomfortable because I said that because we're about to say that his body language here makes us think that there is truth to it. That's why I mentioned that we don't take lightly. We love body language detective work. We love it. Love it. I love it. John Boy's made a career out of lip reading, right? So I don't take too much glee in this, but we do love body language work. So the point is we do this with respect for John Lynch. But his body language here, he is extremely uncomfortable, and his level of discomfort makes you think that there is truth. Makes me think that there is truth to it.
Well, it's easy to play conspiracy Bill Simmons here. Just add it up. One of the biggest rumors going, it's in just sports media because it's the National Football League, is Amazon is prepared to give Troy Aikman a ton of money. And then you go, well, okay, Troy Aikman could go to Amazon for $30 million. Well, what does that mean? That means there's no one sitting in his seat. Well, who does Fox have, on their lineup? Not really anyone of that stature. Who used to work at Fox in the number 2 seat? John Lynch. Who, since he has left, resume would make him, I wouldn't say, I just think when you're a quarterback of that stature, not Troy Aikman's level of just fame, Dallas Cowboys quarterback, 3 championships, different level. But since he left the number 2 chair, he's entered the Hall of Fame as a player, and he has been the general manager of a team that went to a Super Bowl and a team that played in front of 50 fucking million people on Fox. And he's worked with Kyle Shanahan, and he's worked with a team that I would say whenever the television schedule comes out, initially scheduled 3 or 4 primetime Fox games on top of just, obviously they have the NFC. He makes a ton of sense. And then the other thing, I text a couple people today because I didn't even know they were going live, honestly. I knew they were in the next couple days, but I didn't see the time or whatever, so I just got a text like, you just see John Lynch? I'm like, no. What did he say? And then a couple people forwarded me the comment. And my first reaction was, listen, I lasted in the NFL 3 years. It is such a grind. I can't even imagine the pressure on his level of just everyone answers to him. He has to put in the hours as all these other people, but he also has the stress. And then when he watches the games, he has no juice in terms of no juice to impact the game. that it had to be. I bet he'll say if I expect him to be done. It was the most gratifying, but it was also just it was an experience that I didn't even quite realize what I was getting into. Because I don't think he'd leave. He's already rich, right? I mean, he wouldn't leave necessarily for the money or whatever. But I think he kind of came, he conquered, and he also think about Adam Peters and Joe Shane were the finalists for that job. Adam Peters clearly is going to be hell, you could argue he was like a number 1 or 2 candidate just on the market this year. I thought he has a better resume than Joe. Maybe the Giants wanted to go more with an East Coast guy. I don't know. But his resume is pretty fucking good for a guy that's 42 years old or 40 years old or however old Peters is. The guy's going to be a GM, and he's sitting here, and he's from here. I mean, he grew up in Danville, went to UCLA. Like, he is a California. He was a 49er fan. Right? I mean, it's a pretty special thing. So assuming him and Kyle have a close relationship, it's a pretty smooth transition for John.
Again, here's the other part of it. Have you checked Tony Romo's salary? He's making $17 million. You can make more in TV than you can as a GM. Now, if John Lynch stayed the Niners GM for the next 10 years, there'd be enough raises that you'd get up to.
I mean, he did get an extension. What would you guess? I hate pocket guessing, but
pocket watching.
when you guess he's making $6-7 million right now?
Yeah, I think probably in the 7 range. He was probably making close to what was he making when he took the job?
Probably 3 or 4.
Yeah, I mean,
Bay Area prices, inflation. I mean, it's just.
I thought Kyle's reaction, because you and I were debating, is this the first Kyle's heard of this story? Maybe it's the first he's heard of Boomer. I thought, to me, Kyle's reaction was a guy who knows it's true,
I agree,
but is trying to cover. Like, oh man, you would, whatever Kyle said.
When you told me over the phone or went through text or talking before we hopped on that his reaction was he knew it was true, I didn't quite understand. Like that's as loose of a Kyle move as I've ever seen. Because he shook his head like, no, I haven't heard. Play the start of that.
From Boomer Esiason on his radio show, I'm sure you've heard it by now, that you were contemplating going back to TV.
Try not to laugh.
I was hoping that you could address that.
I thought he was talking to me. I was like, I've never been
And then he
on.
drops that.
Yeah, I have not heard that rumor.
Is Kyle looking is Kyle looking at his phone right now? Is somebody texting Kyle right here at this portion?
Heard that.
Might be. Guy, maybe
rumor,
maybe there is a chance.
From time to time.
That at this point in time,
opportunities are
Kyle's
presented,
pretty self-assured or
and,
whatever. Is pretty
I
just
can
not
tell
his
you
phase. Like
and tell
maybe Kyle
everyone
doesn't
that,
know, but he just
that
played
my
it pretty
commitment
cool there.
right
Thought
now
he
is
was
to this
talking to me.
organization.
There is a
And,
chance.
We're just coming off a season.
John's
but
rattled.
my commitment is to the 49ers, to the York family, to Kyle, and standing up in front of that team yesterday and just.
Somebody said have a
And on a
liberty tell us
rumor,
what
but
Kyle
there was
says off
a big
mic.
one this morning from Boomer Esiason
Right
on
here.
his radio show. I'm sure you've heard it by now, that you were contemplating going back to TV. I was hoping that you could address that.
I thought he was talking to me. I was like,
Oh, he says I thought he was talking to me.
Yeah.
That's what he says.
I have not heard that.
Doesn't he say someone
that
offered him a
rumor.
job here?
From time to time, opportunities are presented, and
Yeah, from time to time, opportunities are presented, and then his ankle itches suddenly.
I can tell you.
What is- so-
and tell
Oh no! His ankle does. It's not that his ankle itches, John. He moves his bottle of water. That's what he does here. Watch this.
talking to me. I was like, I've never been on TV.
He
Yeah.
reaches. He's got a bottle of
I
water
have
on the
not
floor
heard that. That
And he
rumor,
moves it. For some reason.
From time to time,
He's caught
opportunities are
red-handed.
presented. And,
Bottle of water. Move it.
I can tell you
Move it.
and tell everyone that that my commitment right now is to
Holding
this
it.
organization. And we're just coming off a season.
Well, here's the thing,
but
guy.
My commitment is to the 49ers, to the York family, to Kyle, and
Yeah, you can talk. I lowered it here. You can talk over.
Yeah, I mean, he is not. When you get a guy like this who turns out to be like clearly his value to the 49ers was incredibly high, is that he didn't need this. Like Kyle at this point in time, so rich, he doesn't need it either. But Kyle's even said, like, I'm good at one thing, it's coaching football. Like John's done other things. He played football. He then did TV. He's called games. Like he does not have to do this. And I think the grind that goes on, especially when you have, listen to that Belichick book. The drive in Bill before they won that Super Bowl was just obsessive. like he does have a young guy who has just not got to the mountaintop yet. And every waking moment until he figures it out, whether that's next year, whether that's 3 years, whether that's that drive of just
For Kyle, you're talking about.
yeah. So it's like his pedal to the metal is not going to be like, this year we could just kind of, instead of going 80 down the freeway, let's just cruise like 66.
I also think, don't you? No, you're right. You're saying Kyle is not. I think Kyle, now he's going to take 2 weeks off, go play catch with, hopefully nothing happens in Cabo. The Rams don't add some other free agent. The key for him is to go right now before Sean McVay's down in Cabo. But who did you say the other day he'd meet in Cabo?
Who?
Oh, Brady? I don't know. Anyway, I thought you made a Shanahan and Cabo joke. But I like I said earlier, I think Kyle is very fired up for like climbing the mountain again, trying to do it again. Because I think what happens when you're close sometimes, it can go two ways for people. Getting really close to something, you can think, oh my God, that was so hard, I got to go through that again. Or you think, I was so close, I'm going to get closer the next time. How many times when you're shooting a shot from like, over the house, or you're playing a video game, you're like, one more time. And then it's 6 more times because you feel like you're close. And that's kind of Kyle. Kyle's like, one more time, I'll put the controller down. Last time, if I die again, I'll quit. And then you get killed in the video game and you keep going. And that's Kyle. Like, Kyle's really excited. The other thing is, I think games are fun for Kyle. He gets to call the plays. I don't think games are fun for John. I think they're really stressful for him, probably. How many times have you seen a shot of John Lynch on TV during an Niner game? It's pretty helpless up there in the booth wearing a suit.
Sucks.
I would guess he loves, like, after the game he loves the game in hindsight, right? But I bet it's pretty stressful for a guy that used to play the game to just watch this team.
Yeah, I just think he, ultimately his goal, I'm sure, was to be a GM and win a ring, and they got damn close. But I do think he can leave, like pretty fucking successful.
Yeah.
Having drafted and getting credit, whether it was like he was pounding the table or not, he was the general manager of a team that made all these moves with all these sweet players that are on the squad, right? So and like you said before we hopped on here, his value now to Fox is much greater than it was when he was on, and he was solid, right? Mm-hmm. Just like Steve Kerr, when I always thought Steve Kerr was a little overrated, as like he was fine, and I think Lynch. I thought
he was like plus. I thought he was pretty good.
I
on
think
TV.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't like him and John. To me, they just lean a little positive. I guess I like a guy that would be a little more negative, and because I actually think they have some similarities. But I think if you bring them both back, like Steve now obviously has won championships and coach, like would be so valuable that he'd be the number one free agent in the history of broadcasters for basketball. I wouldn't say John is that, but his value is just way higher. And I do think the Adam Peters thing, like you have a guy that like I can set Kyle up, assuming that those guys are close and that was what would happen, but you would think like they're pretty closely aligned, right? Because the other thing you see, the shots are John is always with Adam. And I do think sometimes like from the Belichick, just the stories around like he doesn't teach anybody. And I've read a lot about Joe Shane, the Giants guy. He said one thing Brandon Beane really did for me the last several years is include me. Because if you're not included in these things, it's hard to really know what's going on. Besides, like I can just sit in my office and watch players and get ready for the draft. But when I get included in trainer meetings, included in salary cap meetings, like I think it's pretty fair to say that Adam Peters has been included, maybe from the jump, but definitely the last, once they started winning, like has been like pretty tight at the hip with John. So he's pretty equipped to just. It's such a smooth transition.
Mac Dre says, I think Lynch wants to win a Super Bowl.
Well, of course he does.
I'm sure he does. Be interesting. If he were to leave, it would not, you would stay through the draft, right? If that is what would happen.
Yeah, it's like maybe Fox doesn't need you till the season. It's like,
maybe do a Debo contract.
Do you think because I saw someone in the chat said, well, if they had the choice, Sean Payton or John Lynch, would it be a little bit of a risk for a guy that's never done TV to put him in the number one chair with Joe Buck?
Yeah, well, and the risk would be that Sean would leave again in a year or two, right? I think the thing that John Lynch would have is, first of all, him and Burkhardt were so good together because Burkhardt's really good. And I've talked to Burkhardt about him. I think you've talked to Burkhardt before too. Like that, people love John Lynch, loved working with John Lynch. I'm sure Joe Buck would love to work with John Lynch. It would just be an easy, like, it's one of those tie goes to the better guy. Now, I don't know if it's a tie, and I think Sean Payton would be a bigger star. Like if you said John Lynch is taking over number one crew, Sean Payton's taking over number one crew, I think Sean Payton's a bigger star, and no one's heard him before, so that'd be part of it. It's like, God, what's Sean Payton going to be like? But I think Sean Payton would bring the risk of having to replace him again in, a short amount of time.
Yeah.
We think fire Romo, save $7 million and pay Lynch 10?
You would say that Fox has had pretty special stability with those two guys, right?
It's hard to get bigger than Cowboys quarterback, right? Like there's no, if I said Aikman's leaving, who do you get? Like who would be your list?
Dak?
Cooper Kupp's dad?
Yeah. Kellen Moore, he's finally leaving the Cowboys.
Jason Garrett. They'd be like, Jason Garrett, it's gonna work. Like, oh.
What if it did?